Hello and welcome back to another Six Sages Gaming Duel series. Today we have for you two very exciting lists to kick off our Opus II content. On the left we have the Ice Earth deck, which has been updated and, as you guys know, was my personal favorite, one of my favorites from the Opus I meta. And on the right we have the standard unit deck that the other Matt will be playing, which is updated from Wind Water Brew, updated from Japan, from one of the tournament shops that they had hosted. So the Ice Earth list can be found on Twitter, but we will be updating it a little bit. So you see that I'm going to be leading off with the Devout here. If you've watched the old videos, this deck does really treat Devout as a 2-drop because oftentimes there are going to be different cards in your break zone that you want to combo off, be it Laguna, be it Gapal, be it Delita, even with this deck. There's a few different things that you want to make sure that are in your break zone early so you have the option to get them back later. Matt just deciding to run out his Warrior of Light here, not having any good backups that looks like he wants to play. Looks like he discarded a no-no, which he could have played, but maybe his hand is... it looks like his hand is all water, actually. It is, so couldn't have played it. Really poor opening hand for him, it looks like. My major consideration here, as we were playing our games both off camera and on this during these matches, was trying to get the most out of Raban, I believe is how you pronounce his name, basically the fight backup. So he only has an 8k, we're not feeling a ton of pressure here, so we're just going to play a Duke, which gives all our ice forwards plus 1000 and pass back the turn. And again, I really want to take this moment to stress how important or how relevant plus 1000k backups are now in the current meta. They're always good before, but now that we have so many different effects that deal 7, especially with Fusuya, they're absolutely mandatory to be played. So Warrior Light gets an point of damage here, hitting Renoa, which is not something that we want to see get hit off the top, and then Matt plays a Viking followed up with the Mannequin that becomes a 7k when he has 4 or more forwards. So again, we finally draw another Earth source, and that was always the difficult part with this deck, is that it doesn't have a lot of resources if you want to try to cast your Earth every single turn. It's certainly more of a backup element, and decks like that are fine to run, but you have to be cautious, or you have to keep in mind that there will be turns where you're kind of getting stuck waiting for the second card that you need. So here I was thinking about cracking Devout, and if we're doing it for Vayne or Laguna, just trying to see what my options are. We have the Terra and Jill in our hand, and both these cards are great, but after when your opponent has already attacked or had done something. So just freezing the Warrior Light isn't doing a lot for us. We're better off saving it. And then here's where I just decide which one I'm going to end up grabbing. And I'm going with Laguna to dull the other Viking. He freezes if you have Squall. And then we decide to fight. I very well could have just played the Jill and freeze both, but Warrior of Light is such an important card to get off his field as soon as we can that we wanted to take the opportunity for him to lose it. And I believe he has a Leviathan. Okay, I think he did have the resources in his hand to bounce it in response to save it. It still get it off the field, which helps us out a little bit, but there is a case where he could have bounced it, it looks like, to save his Warrior of Light. And now we're just going to be getting our Mannequin party off here. One short, but if he gets a forward next turn, they're both going to be live, and we still only have one forward on the field, so we can't be overly aggressive here. And again, it looks, I think we drew the double Terra this turn, which lets us take a couple points of damage, not feel terrible about it, and then we get to remove 2 of his guys. So it looks like we have the 3-drop and the 4-drop Terra in hand. And again, just another wonderful card to combo with Devout, and really helps the deck kind of pick off more of these early targets that we need it to. So Matt plays an Arc, the new 2-drop backup from Opus II that gives all your standard units plus 1k. This was me verifying. I keep forgetting several times in this match, actually, that mannequins are not standard units. And that is a very, very important thing to remember as you are playing your games. And we decided that for our matches, at least for camera, because there's going to be a lot of pluses going on at random times, to start using dice in our videos. And here I'm trying to switch to the white and black ones just because they're a little bit easier to read. But ultimately just so we can understand where the pumps are all going. Now, keeping in mind, it is certainly your opponent's responsibility to remember what pumps are where. So certainly in a more competitive setting, you are under no obligation to put dice on your cards. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it. But there are pros and cons to doing it, but it certainly helps, at least being clear in the videos, but also it can help additionally in playtesting. And this is where we decide that we're just going to go for the Terra play. When she comes into play, she deals 4,000 to something. If you use her special, which is magic charge, you get to deal 8,000 to something instead. Because there were 7Ks, they're both going to die to her effect. And again, huge swing here. And I forgot that Bartz is getting buffed. That's why I dulled him off the other Laguna. There is certainly a case here to get rid of the Viking instead. But we went with the Bartz, and we can freeze it this turn. And we don't have to worry about the Viking swinging at us, because even with Warrior Light, it only gets bumped up to a 4K. It's a 1K if I remember correctly. So it's by no means scary. Here, Matt doesn't have a lot of options. Really just discard Leviathan, get a Scholar in, and get his backups going. The 2Ks really not doing anything for him relevant this turn. There could be a case to hold it if he really wants to. If he wants to play the Leviathan later and try to trade up once he gets a Warrior Light on the field. But I think being able to play Scholar here would have helped accelerate his game plan and get some more resources in field. This is where I got stuck a little bit trying to discern what was in his hand versus what I want to do. Now, Delita is, again, Delita is a very important card in this deck for the different things it can do, like breaking Renoa or breaking one of your backups that you had already played so you can make room for another. So it feels terrible to discard it. That said, because we are ahead on damage here and because we need to make our guys 9Ks, there's certainly a point to playing it. Now, and this is where I was kind of pointing to my card that I can either save the Mateus to play defensively, hoping he attacks with Bartz, which he most likely will because it's huge, forcing him to lose it, or we play the Squall here to make him lose 2 cards because we have Laguna in the field, but then we're also losing our last card. And that's where you can see me tapping 3 to play Delita versus tapping the 2 and discarding for Squall. I'm not terribly convinced, again, which one was right over the other, but there is a point where playing the Delita would have been the right play as well, depending on how the rest of the top decks had went. So we got him for points of damage, played Squall. Now they're both 9Ks, excuse me, 10Ks, because we have Duke, which does make it bigger than Bartz, and we are feeling a little bit better about our game plan here. And again, what I really like about this deck, this is one of those situations where hitting a Gapal would just feel absolutely amazing. At best, he's going to be playing one other attacker here. We can push him to 6. We have a blocker for his Viking, and it just helps push through that bit of damage and then just win with something on the next turn. So him and asking again what our power toughnesses are. So I put Duke on top. We have a 10, 10, and an 8. No cards in hand, which is a little rough, but we do rip the Renoa here, which is going to help out a lot. Of course, always try to attack first, because unless you're playing something that's going to benefit you, there's no point of doing that. And this is also what feels terrible. He's able to bounce our Laguna, which drops Squall in power and makes us feel terrible. So he was asking, which one should he have used here, or which one should he have bounced? And I said ultimately that either way he could have done. He would have got the same thing. Him having no cards in hand, so we don't want him to bounce the Squall, because then we're only stuck discarding, and it doesn't feel that great. But playing Renoa here, becomes an 8K, knowing that we have the Laguna back in our hand, and we have Squall as well. So in a perfect world, we're going to be able to play Squall, make him discard a card if he has anything left, or play Laguna, tap a blocker and get another point of damage, and then let Renoa just take away the rest of this game. Because again, once you get up to 10K, which is fairly easy, you just attack with her first each turn. Your opponent doesn't want to try to block and kill her, because then the rest of your attacks go through. So it's really just free points of damage. Here he plays the Whisper. I can't do anything about the cards he has. I could block Bart's here with Renoa, and this is me just checking the text again, but turns out not worth it. Renoa is just such an important card in your deck that it is absolutely worth keeping. And here's where we hit an interesting decision, and brings up a very good point, and I don't remember which I decided on was right. Kefka works quite well with Renoa, so we can break it on our opponent's turn and then swing with all our stuff. But I think Devout is just better, at least at what we want to be doing. Devout lets us bring back Delita on our turn after we attack with Renoa, so we're getting an extra point of damage in there, because Devout just says it has to be done on your turn, doesn't say that it has any other kind of limitations. So I spend way too long here. Again, we had only played a handful of games with these decks off camera before being able to record them. Our locals are tomorrow night that we're getting ready for and just trying out new builds. So I spent way too long trying to figure out what was the right play here. And if I had a Delita in my break zone already, then we play the Devout. If I didn't, then we simply play the Kefka. And I forget what was in the break zone up to this point. So attack with Terra, no point not to. There is a point here to not attack with Renoa, so that if something goes horribly wrong, we can play defensive and break it, so we don't just lose on a crackback. And this is me, again, Devout versus Kefka, trying to figure out which one's right. So I end up going with the Kefka just because it gives me more options. And not to be missed either is that Kefka can also just be used for Terra and getting it off the field if we want to play another Terra, for example. So Kefka was actually quite the MVP for this deck. So we are very well positioned to get in the last few points of damage. It looks like it's a pretty close race, but he's really only able to attack with Bart's. We still have an 8K, and we're going to be able to set up quite a powerful turn. And hitting Emperor off the top there so we don't draw it is actually a huge plus to us. So again, Mateus, I'm not terribly in love with that card. It does do a few things for us, so that probably will be getting cut out of the deck. And then Snow as well. I think we're going to be switching to Seraphia just to talk through a couple of the different changes that we have planned for it. So again, Laguna here is going to let us dull and freeze something. This is where I was saying that I don't know which. I was thinking that Devout was in my hand. Or I'm sorry, just dull, not dull and freeze. I was thinking that there's something in my hand, but it still dulls something. Let us get through a couple points of damage. And again, the relevant thing here, we're able to leave up Kefka, which is just going to give us lethal pretty much no matter what on the next turn. If he had Fairy in his deck, which I knew he didn't, or something along those lines, that certainly would have helped, but he's going to do some stuff, and then we are just going to be able to break our Renoa. Now, the really weird mind game that happens now is that technically Matt would try to pass, I would break Renoa, and then it goes back to his main phase. So there's a point here to try to play the Warrior Light after it's tapped. So that kind of creates an odd board state, but seems like something that will just ultimately be cleared up with some rules. So the way it works currently, he played Warrior Light, I break Renoa, and get in the last points of damage. This is where I told him, just play it out for the camera, but 3 cards, or we have 3 attackers, and then plus Capal there just for insult to injury. Lets us get in those last couple points of damage. So going to game 2 now. Again, we're going to record 3 videos, or at least whenever we can, try to record 3 videos for you guys, time permitting and all that good stuff. So we are going to be on the draw yet again. Again, hand's not nearly as exciting as we'd hoped for, but we have that early Devout, so we can get rid of some cards that we don't really care about, like Snow in this instance is just going to be tossed. And we can set up a vein for our break zone, which we can get back if needed. And the other Matt's hand is a bit harder to see, so we can't really make heads or tails of it. So he goes down to 1 card, and by drawing 2 here, we kind of just get to live the dream in all reality, and it takes a little while just to make sure I can do my math and whatnot. But again, Warrior of Light is just such a key card for that deck that oftentimes, if you're able to kill Warrior of Light, you're going to be coming out so far ahead. It did get some new tools in the form of Quistis, which gives your, I believe it's 2 drops or less plus 1,000, and it did get the Whisper, so you guys can just be unblockable anyways. But Warrior of Light is ultimately the champion of the deck. So we almost messed up this play by discarding the wrong thing, so we had to kind of rewind, discard to play Vayne, then play our fight backup. That is pretty much the reason why I'm playing Earth in every deck now in every tournament for Opus II, and able to kill his Warrior of Light. A thing to note here is that a Vayne doesn't do anything against his deck because he doesn't have any 5-drops, but it is still just an 8k body, which sometimes can be enough. So here we get to play the Devout, just kind of setting up what cards we might want to be getting back out of our break zone. He has a Viking to draw a card, which gets plus 1,000 from the Waka backup, which gives all water forwards you control plus 1,000 power. But again, nothing too scary by any means in terms of we have an AK that's still going to be able to attack. So here, just no point not to attack. We're going to be bigger, and not really much value to play anything here. As a small note, again, as a theory standpoint, there is a reason to play a Jill here with no legal targets, such that on the next turn we'd be able to bring back something with Devout, have 2 backups, and then be able to pitch 1 card that we draw and play a 4-drop, and in theory play 2 4-drops in a turn, which again, if you want to have Squall and Laguna, that might work. So ultimately I decided not to. I'd rather try to hold it for value, knowing how strong it can be, but that is something worth considering. Sometimes you just have to play the 2-drop backup for no value if your next turn is going to be that much better. So here Matt makes a mistake by discarding Water for Aerith. I catch him on it, and he just discards a different card. Discards an Arc, which is the only option, but it allows him to retap or untap the Waka so he can play something else during this turn. Going to attack first, just make sure I don't hit anything, and then spend 2 to play a Mime. And again, Mime is just such a great card for party attacking and being able to draw a card. If you like drawing a lot of cards and maybe you want to add Marrowweb to this deck, for example, the standard unit deck is quite fun to play and can burn through the deck pretty quickly. So again, we're winning the damage race at this point, no reason not to attack. Trying to get him to party attack on the next turn because we have Jill in hand and we can just get away with doing that. And here we're just going to play Squall. I'm not terribly in love with the 3-drop Legendary just because of how much I love the discard-based version, but there's certainly still a point to play it if you are seeing a lot of, for example, Golbez base decks in your meta, because the first strike until end of turn and be able to ping something for 6,000 can absolutely be extremely relevant and can counter their per se Gapal quite easily. So here we see another Warrior of Light coming down, being able to boost the team by now a total of 3k and give them first strike. And this is where it starts to get very scary for our Ice Earth player. So again, no reason not to really attack here. They're both huge. He has first strike, and he gets a draw card off of it. So all positive things for him. The only possible downside here is that he only has Warrior of Light to be defensive with now, but he does realistically need something to get going with the points of damage, and hopefully drawing some extra cards will help. So here we push him to 5 points of damage, milling another Warrior of Light, or not milling, but getting rid of the last Warrior of Light absolutely feels great. And here again, we're kind of stuck sitting on Devout, trying to figure out exactly what we want to be doing with it. So Devout can just get back Squall, so this is fine to freeze the two. And we decided to play a 1-drop here instead. So again, setting up something where we can just Devout and play something else on our next turn, which will hopefully win the game on the spot, but it looks like there is a Gapal in there as well. So he's going to have to produce a couple blockers and potentially have to worry about getting rid of them if we play a Gapal or something. So tapping 2 to play the Arc, tapping 2 to play the Knight, keeping some card in hand. Couldn't see what that was, but... And this is where it'd be fine to if we hit another vein, we could use his special. Drawing runner off the top here is actually just absurd. Being able to draw both those Terras, they're under the 8k. And again, Terra does double before the damage happens. It's not 4k, for example. It is just all out deals 8k. So Terra is able to just be wonderful and do exactly what we need her to do in this situation. And this was me kind of weighing my options, determining what else I might want to do with my resources. Because again, I could just... Devout something, and if I really want to get rid of the last card in my hand, I decided that Bike might be worth something at some point, so I want to keep the last card, be it Destroy Minwu, Destroy, Aerith, what have you. So get rid of 2 of his forwards with Terra's ability to deal 8k, and then just pass. Again, the hope in this is to just set something up next turn where we can just Gapal and win anyways. And I realize that the break zone can be a little bit difficult to read here, so we will most certainly try to fan those out in future matches as well. So Matt here playing another Mime. Again, just a great card for being able to draw more cards. Looks like he has a Leviathan, and I can't see the last card in his hand. So Leviathan is great for bouncing a problematic forward, but I have nothing that's really worth bouncing in this situation. So just get to draw some more cards. And again, the thing I love about the Ice Earth deck so much is because you get to use your break zone as a resource, and Devout is just one of my favorite cards, and it really might be one of my favorite uncommons now that I think about it. Or commons? Uncommon. Well, it's rare in this game, sorry. Common or rare. I'm pretty sure it's a common, though. Just because of the utility that it offers you. And being able to play something for free, yes, you pay for it up front, but it can then generate you a few few crystal points as the game goes on. It is certainly worth using in all your ice decks. I love Devout and see that card being played quite a bit going forward. So again, here we're just trying to do the math, making sure that we're not screwing up anything, not missing anything else that we could be bringing back. Was a little bit later for recording, pretty much per always as we record. And this is where I say it was late because I tried to decide which one to break, and I probably should have broke the Minwu for a future turn. I broke the Waka strictly to lower their power, but that doesn't really matter that much compared to having that Warrior Light on the field. So here we're just going to turn everything sideways, get some attacks in, he's going to block, and then just be stuck left with a Warrior Light and 6 points of damage, which is absolutely fine for us. He then has to worry about the 4 things that we have coming back. So he decides to scoop it up, nothing that he can really do to come back from that situation, and it is really difficult to come back from that. So game 3 now. Certainly not an optimal hand. And the Emperor doesn't really do a lot against him in this matchup. It's very narrow in the things that it hits. So I decided to keep this hand just because those 3 cards I just happen to be fanning now are really kind of the 3 key cards in the deck, and it hurts to shuffle one of each to the bottom, or not shuffle, place one of each on the bottom. So we decided to keep them. Leaves the Viking, gets to cycle, dig a card deeper for his Warrior of Light, plays a Scholar, and it looks like he's deciding if he wants to go in on that play again, and he does. So we're going to draw 2 cards. Now, if we would have hit the Earth here, it would have felt fantastic, but unfortunate for us, I suppose we don't. So we're just going to play the Emperor, which turns off anything that all his characters that say have the effect that says cost : effect, meaning anything that has a pay or a dull symbol or an S can be turned off. So here he bounces Emperor, which again is not that great to be stuck in our hand. Gets to get in 2 points of damage. We would have really loved to draw that Terra here, but now he has no cards. So speaking of getting to live the dream, and as you see, that other Terra would have been really nice to draw here. We do hit the other Earth resource, but the issue I was having, as I didn't want to discard some of the other cards that were in my hand. Again, this would have been a great opportunity to just play the Emperor and then play our backup to be able to kill Warrior of Light, but ultimately that's something that we had just missed. So don't be mad, don't pull our mistakes. So here we just get to do it the next turn, and because we have Emperor, he won't be able to Scholar it. So here he forgets. I just do the very hard point. Scholar can't save Warrior Light, so we're able to fight it. He passes, and those are kind of one of the situations where the Emperor can be really good in helping set up these combo plays, but ultimately by itself, sometimes just a vanilla 8K really isn't doing a lot for you. And it's very difficult in a deck that's unable to bump him to 9,000, because chances are 8Ks just get trumped fairly easily in the game now. So as Viking is still frozen, can't do anything, just plays an Arc and passes. We get to play a Duke now. Again, Gopal put him into the break zone exactly where we want him to be anyways. A card that we just want to be able to develop for much later in the game. And we're able to get in a point of damage with the Emperor. Here he plays 4 for a Bartz, which again is a standard unit. So because he played Arc, they're both going to be getting plus 1,000. And now our Emperor is just kind of stuck. Lucky for us, we hit a Mateus here, so we're able to kill his Viking. Not that it's, again, terribly relevant, but keeping control of his board and making sure he isn't just able to swarm with standard units is critically important to surviving this matchup. So our video cut out there, so sorry for that quick bump, but debating between playing the other card in my hand, or we decided just to go with Renoa here, just so I didn't have to discard a card off Squall, strictly because we have 3 backups. We can play it without any cost. Gives us more options on our next turn. And again, making our opponent only discard 1 card here probably wasn't going to be doing a lot for us anyways. He plays a Knight, which is also a standard unit. Goes up to an 8k thanks to Arc. And very quickly our forwards are getting classed out. Thankfully we have Duke, so Renault right now is an 8. But we do need to get things like Squall and Laguna onto the field so that they will do more. And again, the rough point here is that because they're both standard units, Terra is now going down in value because he already has 2 bigger guys, and if he plays a Warrior Light, Terra's enter effect really isn't going to be doing anything for us. So we force him to discard. We're going to pump Renoa up to a 9, but again, he has Bartz, which is conveniently sitting at 9 right now, so we can't do anything about it. So discards for a Minwu, which can make things very difficult for us if we wanted to play the other Squall. Thankfully, we just played the discard 1, so he will become at 10k as soon as we play that Laguna. But again, ultimately leaves us a little bit behind. But getting to play 2 cards here in this turn helps us out a lot by being able to play the 1-drop backup and then being able to play Laguna and freeze something. So, and that's exactly what we do. Laguna comes in, it gets to dull and freeze now because we have Squall. The Bartz gets rid of his best attacker and blocker, and then we are able to swing freely for points of damage. Now, because we have Squall and Laguna on the field, and we have Duke, she is now a 10k. So, again, very aggressive card that is something Ice absolutely needed. And again, her on break effect is absolutely insane. So here he has an 8k, which wasn't really great enough, but then this is where we talk about he gets the Warrior of Light, able to bump it up to a 10k that now has first strike and is very suddenly a very dangerous combination, something we have to care about. So we had already played our fight backup. This is me going through my my break zone to figure out what if we had seen any lead at this point. You can see that there's 1 in my damage, so we feel pretty terrible about it. And we do get a little bit stuck on what our options are. So lucky for us that Bartz is still tapped, so we can match it with Renoa. And the thing again to note here is he's already high on damage, so Renoa just gets to attack freely here because if he does decide to block and try to trade, that the rest of his team is just going to get tapped and we swing for 3 points of damage. Here I swing with Squall, just trying to force something at his end. But this ends up being a huge play mistake on my end. I'm holding the bike in my hand, or Hecatoncheir, and I forget that it only breaks 3 or more. In the Japan version that we played a lot with, it breaks any backup. So this is me being a fool and completely forgetting which backup to break, or rather that's just not a legal target. So usually whenever you make an illegal play like that in a trading card game, you rewind to the point of casting because that's the last legal thing, and you have to choose a new target. In this case, we just play Minwu to keep honest about it, but complete mistake on my end and complete blowout is what happened there. So he had mentioned as we were playing, it's like, oh, I guess I just have to call your bluff here. And he called my bluff with me being terrible at this game. So ultimately, feels real bad. Able to get Minwu off the field at least, but ultimately not really what we were concerned about. And losing an attacker there does hurt our combat math for the next turn, say if he hits a Leviathan or something. So Bartz gets to freely attack, and now he's trying to think if he needs to attack with Knight or leave it on defense. He decides to leave it on defense, needs to get some kind of board presence going, and then hopefully winning on the next turn is ultimately what his game plan is. So lucky for us, we are able to hit a Gapal here, which again just makes our guys bigger, thankfully, and we get to do some really fun stuff by being able to discard a card, discard the Terror to play Gapal, make our team bigger, and then leave up Jill's special and freeze. And here again, you see me just trying to do some math just to make sure. It's like, okay, well, he can take 1 point of damage, and then he has to block with the rest. And I was worried about him having, if he hits a Leviathan or something. So the thing to note here is that we get to get a blocker by playing Gapal, and we have Jill's effect up, and then we can leave Renault on defense if we are really worried about it. But Gapal comes in, buffs the team, and then we get to get in for some victory points here. So at this point, the Emperor has done his job with being able to nullify some effects. He's just going to get in and come marching across the table for a point of damage. So worried about losing some cards here. He's just going to block. Matt could have eaten the first point of damage just to see what it would have been. And again, certainly just should have attacked here anyways, forcing him to take that 6 point of damage because it sets up the next turn. Oh, looks like I actually did. I thought I ended up missing that. Because again, we have Jill, so we can set up for on the next turn. If he does play a blocker, we can just dull and freeze it before it goes back to our turn, and he is going to spend all his time and resources trying to play that one guy that we can just nullify with what's in hand. And that's exactly what happens here. We see a Quistis into play to put a Viking. And again, so the thing to note here is he gets to put in 2 off of that instead, which is a bit difficult for us, but we do get to at least answer one of them. And it looks like he missed the effect from it. So we play Jill, just freeze his best forward, and then we get to untap. If we like to live the dream, this is certainly what I like to call winning the dream. Living the dream, rather, is we get to play Delita, break Rin, tap his entire team, and swing 3 times, even though we only need points to win. So that is the match, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. The Ice Earth deck is still a work in progress, but is absolutely instantly a favorite of mine. As you guys know, I really love Ice, even though it is one of the weaker elements with Opus II, but I certainly think there's a deck there. So look forward to it. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Hope to see you guys on the next 6 Sages Gaming video. Have a good one.